If we're going to break down real fighting in a movie, it doesn't get better than the Muay Thai in Tony Jaa's Ong Bak. It's one of the most iconic martial arts movies of all time. Up until Ong Bak, most martial arts blockbusters had only represented Chinese Kung Fu. But Ong Bak was different. It showed the world the most effective striking system in human history, the national art of Thailand Muay Thai. The choreography in old Kung Fu movies was slick, but it didn't represent real-life combat. In Ong Bak, the fights were realistic, adding a special element of realism, aesthetics, speed, and power to the equation that filmmakers up until then had so far failed to compute. Tony Jaa, the protagonist in Ong Bak, represented Muay Thai on film better than anyone else. He demonstrated the hardness of Muay Thai, not only showcasing the famous offense for which Muay Thai is known, he also exemplified the sport's undervalued defense and ability to take and absorb shots and properly block and evade all types of strikes. All of Muay Thai's primary weapons were on display on Ong Bak. It should come as no surprise then that a primary trainer of Tony Jaa's was Yattong Sinanen, the greatest Muay Thai coach of all time, and one who produced the greatest amount of stadium champions, including the GOAT, greatest of all time, Samart Payakaru. This movie changed the martial arts landscape in film. Muay Thai's knees and elbows are now commonly seen in new action flicks. Let's explore the authentic Muay Thai techniques used in this movie and break down how legendary strikers have used them in actual combat. Sequence 1.
Fight me now! Come on! Back Muay Thai! Ah!
The first sequence is a rear push kick to the face. The push kick, known in Muay Thai circles as the teep, is very different from the front kicks we see in karate and taekwondo. This is a standard attack in Muay Thai, especially one's aim is to deal damage with maximum disrespect. Touching the foot to the face is considered an ultimate insult in Buddhist and Muay Thai culture, and so Tony Jaa responding to the middle finger of his opponent with a rear teep is entirely appropriate. Of course, it doesn't always have to be so personal. The teep has been used by greats like Saenchai against his peers, with whom he is friends. Important to note is that the teep kick doesn't usually end in a knockdown, though it has been accomplished before. Sequence 2. Up next is a left roundhouse against a right hand, a classic counter that a Muay Thai fighter will use when up against a puncher. Typically deployed against a brawler who chucks his right hand from far away, the switch kick lands on the ribs as soon as the rear hand telegraphs the punch. As his opponent is pushed back, Tony then follows up with the Ong Bak elbow, a technique immortalized by this film. This devastating strike has a long history, developed by Golden Era Muay Thai legends such as Somrak Kamsing, later popularized by Anderson Silva, and more recently applied to hellacious effect by Muay Thai prospect Jack Farrett. Most thought this technique to be ineffective at the highest levels of fighting, or at least before Anderson Silva showed its potential to the modern day masses. A legitimate and common tactic in the golden era of Muay Thai, the Ong Bak elbow is then followed by the same roundhouse counter, then with a jumping knee to the face, a classic Muay Boran move. Classically speaking, this jumping knee sequence is triggered when the opponent is in retreat and pushed back to the ropes. In Ong Bak, it's employed against the roundhouse, which I have never seen before. While exceedingly difficult, a Nak Muay talented enough should be able to land it. Sequence 3. The third string of strikes is a punching flurry, followed by a jumping downward elbow. I'm not going to comment on the punches, because mechanically, they are terrible. I'm not sure how they made it into this film. but the jumping downward elbow from 6 feet away is a thing of beauty. I've never seen a downward elbow land from this far away, but I've seen it attempted several times. In fact, here's Santos Davey demonstrating this exact technique. Sequence 4. We arrive here at what is called a knee barrier. It's best rolled out against an opponent who is rushing forward and trying to grab onto you. In Muay Thai, this is a strike best saved for clinching knee fighters. Then, after the headbutt, Tony uses a modified spear elbow that's quite common in Muay Thai. In the movie, the spear elbow combines with a jumping downward trajectory that strikes the top of the head, but in real combat, it's normally landed against the face or the chin. To follow this elbow, Tony climbs on top of the opponent to deliver a double downward elbow. Normally in Muay Thai, a single downward elbow, regularly performed by the best Muay Thai fighter of this era, Saenchai. It is also classic to pay respects to your opponent after a fight in Muay Thai. Sequence 5. This last sequence shows Tony dodging a slew of Taekwondo kicks, a feat that Yatong's most accomplished student, Samart Payakarun, has famously done many times before. Returning a roundhouse after his opponent throws a barrage of spinning attacks only to be knocked down is a sequence that we witnessed Samart complete in front of the Thai king, on the king's birthday no less. Though I limited myself to 5 sequences, Ong Bak is chock full of prime examples of real-world fighting tactics in a make-believe movie setting. It is a worthwhile watch for anyone considering themselves to be a fan of Muay Thai.